Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. When you think of the American Revolution, what comes to mind? George Washington crossing the Delaware. The Declaration of Independence, Paul Revere's midnight ride. These are the iconic moments we all learned in school. But what if I told you that the story we know is just the tip of the iceberg? What if the real history of the American Revolution is filled with secret agents, forgotten heroes, and shocking twists that never made it into our textbooks? Today, we're pulling back the curtain to uncover the hidden history of America's fight for independence. Get ready, because the stories you're about to hear will change the way you see the revolution forever. Let us start with a group you've probably never heard of, the Culper Spy Ring. Forget James Bond. These were the original secret agents of America. Organized by George Washington himself, this network of ordinary citizens, a farmer, a tavern owner, a society lady, risked everything to gather intelligence on British troop movements in New York City. They used a complex system of secret codes, invisible ink, and dead drops. Their leader, known only by the cotton name Culper Jr., was a man named Robert Townsend. He was a Quaker merchant who pretended to be a loyalist to get close to British officers. The information he and his network gathered was crucial. It helped expose Benedict Arnold's treason and saved West Point from falling into British hands. Without the Culper Ring, the outcome of the war could have been drastically different. These weren't soldiers on the battlefield. They were spies hiding in plain sight, proving that information can be just as powerful as a musket. Now, let's talk about the unsung heroes. We often picture the Continental Army as a force of determined, patriotic men. And while that's true, it's not the whole picture. The army was incredibly diverse. It included thousands of black soldiers, both free and enslaved, who fought for a freedom they themselves were denied. Men like Salempore, a hero at the Battle of Bunker Hill, whose bravery was so remarkable that 14 officers signed a petition to Congress praising him. Or James Armistead Lafayette, an enslaved man who posed as a runaway to spy on the British. He fed them false information while funneling critical intelligence to the Americans, directly helping to secure the decisive victory at Yorktown. After the war, he had to petition for his own freedom, which was eventually granted with a glowing recommendation from the Marquis de Lafayette himself. Their contributions were immense, yet their stories have often been sidelined. And what about the women? They weren't just at home knitting socks. Women were on the front lines, serving as nurses, cooks, and laundresses. These camp followers were essential to the army's survival. Some, like Deborah Sampson, took it a step further. She disguised herself as a man, enlisted under the name Robert Shirtliff, and fought in combat for over a year. She was wounded twice, and the first time, she dug the musket ball out of her own thigh with a penknife to avoid being discovered by a doctor. Her secret was only revealed when she contracted a fever. And then there's Agent 355, a still unidentified female member of the Culper Spy Ring. Historians believe she used her high society connections to get close to major British officers, including the intelligence chief John Andre. She was a key player, and her identity remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Revolution. These women defy every convention of their time, proving that courage knows no gender. The familiar narrative also glosses over the deep divisions within the colonies. We talk about patriots versus the British, but the reality was far more complex. The Revolution was also America's first civil war. Neighbor fought against neighbor, and families were torn apart. It's estimated that about 1/3 of the colonists were patriots, 1/3 were loyalists who remained faithful to the king, and the final third tried to stay neutral. Loyalists faced intense persecution, they were tarred and feathered, their property was confiscated, and many were forced to flee, becoming refugees. After the war, nearly 100,000 Loyalists left the United States, heading for Canada, Britain, or the Caribbean. This conflict wasn't a simple case of good versus evil. It was a messy, painful struggle that pitted Americans against each other. And did you know that the revolution almost collapsed not from British bullets, but from within its own ranks? Let's talk about the Newburgh Conspiracy. In 1783, with the war nearly won, the Continental Army was camped in Newburgh, New York. The soldiers hadn't been paid in years, and Congress was broke. They were promised pensions and land, but it seemed those promises would be broken. A group of high-ranking officers became desperate. They secretly planned to march on Congress and take over the government by military force. A coup d'etat was brewing. It was a moment that could have shattered the fragile new republic and installed a military dictatorship. George Washington got wind of the plot. He walked into a tense meeting of the officers, unannounced. He gave a speech, urging them to have faith in Congress, but the men were unmoved. Then, Washington did something unexpected. He pulled a letter from his pocket, but struggled to read it. He then took out a new pair of spectacles, something none of his men had ever seen him wear. He said, "Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have not only grown gray but almost blind in the service of my country." This simple, vulnerable act completely changed the mood. Seeing their legendary general, who had sacrificed so much, now physically diminished, the officers were overcome with emotion. Many of them began to weep. The conspiracy dissolved on the spot. With one humble gesture, Washington saved the republic not with a sword, but with a pair of glasses. Let's also look beyond our borders. The American Revolution wasn't just an American event, it was a global conflict. The entry of France into the war is well known. But what about Spain and the Netherlands? Spain secretly supplied the colonists with money and weapons from the very beginning. They later declared war on Britain, fighting them in Florida, along the Mississippi River, and in the Caribbean. Spanish victories diverted British troops and resources away from the 13 colonies, stretching their empire thin. The Netherlands also provided crucial loans that kept the American war effort financially afloat when it was on the verge of bankruptcy. This wasn't just a colonial rebellion, it was a world war. The fate of America was being decided in naval battles in the Caribbean and diplomatic negotiations in European capitals. Without this international support, the revolution likely would have failed. Finally, let's consider the aftermath for Native American nations. For many tribes, the revolution was a catastrophe. Most, like the Iroquois Confederacy, were caught in the middle. They were pressured to choose a side in a war that wasn't theirs. The powerful Iroquois Confederacy was shattered, with different nations siding with the British or the Americans, leading to brutal internal warfare. Despite promises from both sides, the end of the war was devastating. The Treaty of Paris, which ended the war, completely ignored the native tribes. Britain handed over vast territories of native land to the United States without their consent. The American victory wasn't a victory for everyone on the continent. For Native Americans, it marked the beginning of a new and devastating era of land loss and forced removal. Their story is a crucial, and often tragic, part of the Revolution's hidden history. So, the American Revolution was far more than a simple story of patriots in tri-cornered hats. It was a world of secret spies, forgotten soldiers, courageous women, and deep internal conflicts. It was a global struggle with far-reaching consequences that we still feel today. These hidden stories don't diminish the achievements of the Founding Fathers, they enrich our understanding. They show us that history is made not just by famous generals and politicians, but by ordinary people who made extraordinary choices. By remembering the spies, the soldiers of color, the women, and the dissenters, we get a fuller, more honest picture of how the United States came to be. What other hidden stories from history do you want to hear? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. We'll see you in the next one.